In the United States, inflation skyrocketed in the last few months, but bringing some hints of a probable recession in the near future, according to several economic forecasts, politicians, economists, and market professionals. So, this will bring an end to a very hard season with more layoffs, fewer jobs, and higher interest rates. But it'll take more than a year or two to end the major effect of this current economic trend. The US economy did not slip into a recession despite several negative GDP points over 2 quarters, and now a broad downturn is underway as it shows strong signs of recession in the 3rd quarter. Britain and Eurozone economies are likely to tip into recession next year, but the United States might make a narrow escape thanks to a resilient job market. Let's explore the present and future conditions of the United States economy. Before we proceed, hit the subscribe button and smash the notification bell for more exciting updates. What is recession? As defined by the National Bureau of Economic Research, the recession is a significant decline in economic activity that is spread across the economy and that lasts more than a few months. According to the economic predictions made by the Bloomberg survey of economists last July, the calculated median probability of a recession over a 12-month period since July is 47.5%, up from 30% in June. Now 4 months have already passed, showing some strong signs of recession slowing down inflation. Nancy Davis, founder of Quadratic Capital Management, recently said, "While it's possible that we have passed the peak inflation point, the pace at which inflation is declining is still very slow." In July, Consumer Price Index, or CPI, recorded a value of 9.1%, which is the highest rate since 1981. At that stage, many financial firms predicted a slowdown in 2023. But with the later trends, it was adjusted to the latter part of 2022, expecting a mild recession earlier than expected. The annual inflation rate in the US slowed for a 4th month to 7.7% in October, and it is recorded as the lowest value since the last January. And it is also below the forecasted value of 8% as well. The inflation rate recorded in September was 8.2%, and it indicates a slowdown of the increase of prices of many goods and service sectors. As an example, the energy cost increase was reduced from 19.8% to 17.6% when it came from September to October, with a reduction of gasoline prices and electricity prices from 18.2% to 17.5% and 11.2% to 10.9% respectively. The logistics sector shows a further improvement as the used car and truck prices reduced from 7.2% to 2% within a 1-month period. Most importantly, a slight decrease in the rate of increases in food expenses is observed from 11.2% to 10.9% too. Even though these are slight reductions, these are strong indications to predict that the American economy has already passed the peak points of inflation. But the shadows of the recession yet to be fall in some sectors, as they are still showing increments in October compared to the previous month as well. The most highlighted increment happened in the fuel oil prices, where it rises from 58.1% to 68.5%, despite the overall reduction of increment in the energy sector. In addition to that, shelter expenses also show an increment from 6.6% to 6.9%. Overall, the prices of goods are effective in a more positive way than the service sector to bring the CPI down. The prices of goods show a considerable decrease as they benefited from some improvements in supply chains. Still, the figures continue to point towards strong inflationary pressure, with the broad price increase over the entire United States. One key indicator of the recession is the CPI, or Consumer Price Index, which gives a better interpretation of inflation and deflation. This measures the monthly change in the prices paid by the consumers of the United States. The Bureau of Labor Statistics, or BLS, is the government institute responsible for the calculation of this index as a weighted average of prices for a basket of goods and services, which is a representative sample of US consumer spending. The CPI value for all urban consumers, or CPI-U, rose 0.4% in October on a seasonally adjusted basis, the same increase as in September. When considering the last 12 months, the all-time index increased by 7.7% before seasonal adjustment. With the indexes for gasoline and food also rising, the index for housing represented more than half of the monthly increase in all commodities. The energy index grew 1.8% during the course of the month as both the gasoline and electricity indices increased while the natural gas indices fell. With the food at home index growing by 0.4%, the food index rose by 0.6% over the course of the month. After increasing by 0.6% in September, the index for all products excluding food and energy increased by 0.3% in October. The indices for housing, auto insurance, leisure, new cars, and personal care were among those that rose during the course of the month. Indexes for apparel, medical treatment, second-hand automobiles and trucks, and airline fares were among those that decreased in October. The 12-month growth in the all-times index was 7.7% for the period ending in October. This was the lowest 12-month gain since the 12-month period ending in January 2022. Over the previous 12 months, the all-times index that excludes food and energy increased by 6.3%. The food index grew 10.9% over the previous year, while the energy index increased 17.6% in the 12 months ending in October. All of these increases were lower than during the 12-month period ending in September. Is this an engineered recession? Fed hikes alone are unlikely to create a recession, and they engineered a recession during 1981 to 1982 with the aim of creating economical stability. During that period, the real Fed fund rates reached almost 10%, and under the present situation, Fed is struggling to get the Fed fund rates even up to positive territory. The worst possibility that can be experienced is probably a 5% Fed funds rate coupled with a sudden decline in inflation to 2%. This will result in creating a real rate of 3% definitely, which could be tight money for the present economy, but nothing like earlier experience. In a recent interview with CNBC Network, a professor of applied economics at Johns Hopkins University, Steve Hanke said, "The probability of recession, I think, it's much higher than 50%. I think it's about 80%, maybe even higher than 80%. If they continue the quantitative tightening and move that growth rate and M2, or money supply, into negative territory, it'll be severe." He criticized the Federal Reserve's inability to handle inflation through keeping an eye on the large supply of money sloshing around the economy. They have really been searching for inflation and the causes of inflation in all the wrong places. They're looking at everything under the sun but the money supply, Hanke said. And in fact, they've doubled and tripled down on the argument that money has no relationship to economic activity, or not a reliable relationship to economic activity and inflation. Even though the present actions of the Federal Reserve has already pushed the US economy into a considerable recession, Steve Hanke warned about that too, as there is a possibility of bringing some negative impacts in the future. They are not addressing it correctly, he said. In the 5 months, we've seen broad money major in the United States flatline. It's not growing at all. And now they're going to introduce quantitative tightening. And what that's going to do, that will drive the money supply down. That'll drive it down into negative territory if they keep this up. Hanke said that the right economic move would be to keep money supply growing at a golden growth rate of 5% to 6% to get inflation to about 2%. Now it's 0, and it probably will go negative, the professor said. And that's why we will see a recession in 2023. Why does the labor market play a key role in handling the recession? Federal Reserve is currently doing the difficult task of cooling down a hot labor market to match it with the supply, as it plays a key role in handling the recession. According to Bank of America, or BofA, the United States is going to face a much deeper recession than Europe, as its labor market is already weaker. Europe does not need to cool off its labor market to get inflation down, analysts of Bank of America wrote in a note Friday. By contrast, the Fed has to do the dirty work of bringing labor demand down and in line with labor supply. Adding to the challenge is the fact that pent-up demand for labor in the US is making it very hard to cool off the labor market. So, the Fed has to deal with both the risk of second-round effects and the first-round effect of an overheating labor market. If the Fed wants to get labor cost inflation under control in a timely manner, we think it needs to engineer about a 2% rise in the unemployment rate, the note said. Despite the fears of recession, the US added 261,000 new jobs to the market, surpassing the median estimate of 200,000. But on the other hand, employment rates rose that month to 3.7%, creating a gap between the supply and demand. Economic Research Director at Indeed Hiring, Nick Bunker, used the word moderation to describe the current labor market. Bunker added that the labor market is still robust though. The labor market is cooling down a little bit, but the temperature is still high, Bunker said. As mentioned earlier, the current unemployment rate of the US in October is 3.7%, which is a 0.2% increase relative to the previous month. That is also in excess of 0.1% than the predicted value of 3.6%, according to Bloomberg. According to the latest report issued by Morgan Stanley, Federal Reserves will keep interest rates high in 2023 as inflation still affecting the economy after peaking in the fourth quarter of this year. The biggest problem that can be expected is the rising interest rates that can be expected to expose financial problems. Higher interest rates result in forcing lenders to take losses on the current mortgages and bonds. If the lenders are unable to make enough provisions for those losses, the financial system might start becoming stressed. The US economy just skirts recession in 2023, but the landing doesn't feel so soft as job growth slows meaningfully and the unemployment rate continues to rise, the Morgan Stanley report said, predicting a 0.5% expansion next year. The cumulative effect of tight policy in 2023 spills over into 2024, resulting in 2 very weak years, the report added. So, it'll be hard like winter for all the countries, but the US will escape from it earlier than predicted with its strong economic growth. Thank you very much for watching the video. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe to the channel to not miss anything related to the world's economy. See you guys in the next video. Goodbye.